Hey everybody. Hmm. 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 Right. So. 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 Hey everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Here Now with Matthew. I, of course, am Matthew, as always, and today is another one of those videos that I have been avoiding recording. I've started a couple of times. Oh, that was interesting. That itch there. I have started a couple of times. Once actually successfully hitting the record button. A couple times just kind of looking at the camera and stopping. And I don't really know why, other than I'm scared to put this out there, which has been a common theme. The fear that stops me from taking action, the fear that stops me from living my life, the fear that stops me from saying whatever I feel needs to be said to whoever, and then getting super depressed because I'm not following my heart. Um, And so this is another one of those videos that I'm going to do my best to do in one take. I'm going to try and keep it brief-ish, um, because this camera that I'm using has a max file size of 4 gigs, and if I go over that, then I'm going to have to edit. And I don't. It feels important somehow, for some reason, for this to be as raw as possible. So, um, just if you're watching this, thank you. And I hope it helps because it's certainly helping me to be able to voice all this stuff. And this is going back to that last video I made, a question never asked, and um, kind of going over the fear and the frustration and the anger that I've felt at being forced to be a citizen, like this idea that I don't get a choice in what government I support or where I live, so long as it's within a certain geographical boundary of this nation's borders. And kind of my journey through that. Um, I can't remember everything I talked about in the last video, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned something along the lines of um, how that frustration kind of led to my rejection of society, of getting a regular job, of getting a house, a wife, a kids, the picket fence, the whole 9 yards. And I didn't realize that was at the root of what was driving me. Like when I stepped away from that life, it was in initially 2010, and then again more permanently in about 2012. And it was out of like I was miserable. I hated my life. Like I absolutely hated the job that I had. I hated um, having to work the way that I was. I hated the pressure that came with the job, like all the extra hours, and like I was extremely depressed. I wouldn't have called myself depressed then. Then it was just um, I don't even really remember now. I was just really done. I was just done with living that way, with the 60 to 80 hour work week, with all the pressure and the responsibilities that were kind of put on me that I accepted because I thought I had to, because I thought I had to work to get money and survive. Um, like all these assumptions that were placed on me growing up, that I had to do this in order to get money, in order to eat, in order to have a place to live, in order to have a place to raise a family, that that was the only way, that was the only option that was offered to me growing up. And I didn't realize that that was at the core of it then. I just knew I was miserable and I just wanted to get out. And so I literally ran away to Hawaii, where I worked on a farm for a while and started coming back into like a more emotional, balanced place. And then again, that fear came up well, if I'm going to make this work long term here, I need to have a job. And because again, that was the only concept that I had of how to earn a living and how to make money was to get a job. There was nothing else that was really talked about. Like that was it. Like you go to school so you can get a good job, so you can make good money, so you can, you know the story. Like, and so I gave into that fear again, and got another job and did that for 2 years and ended up possibly even more miserable on Hawaii than I was in Nashville originally. And that was a big wake up call. Like that was okay. If I'm miserable here, there's just something wrong here. Like there's something going on that like there is something going on that I'm not aware of and I'm not addressing. And but again, this wasn't fully conscious. Like it wasn't like I was thinking those things. It was just I knew I was miserable and I knew I needed to change something that was happening in my life. And um, so I gave up the job. I gave up the apartment. I gave up the car that came with the job, and ended up moving to the other side of the island with a dear friend of mine. And her and I traveled around, living in different places for about 2 years on Big Island. And this happened after I had been back in Nashville for a little while. And the entire time I was in Nashville, there was this mantra that I could not get out of my head. It was live on faith. Just live on faith, live on faith, live on faith. And so that's what I did. Like I got back to the Big Island and I had no plan. I had no idea um, where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I think maybe like 2 or 3 days before I flew out, I was talking to Catherine, my friend, who I ended up kind of living and traveling with for a while, and told her I was flying into Hilo, and she goes, "Oh, I'm in Hilo. I'll come pick you up from the airport. You can come stay with me for a while. I'm at this place, blah blah blah." And everything just kind of rolled from there. And I didn't, always stay with her. Like there were times where I stepped out on my own and did my own thing for a while, but it was this 2 year period of nothing but going with the flow, and it was hard and it was frustrating at times. It was scary, but at the same time, it was also amazing and wonderful and hilarious. Like I rarely had money that entire 2 years, but when I needed money, an opportunity would come up and I would be able to make exactly the amount that I needed to pay for whatever it was I needed to pay for. And like once that last dime was spent, I had a dime left sometimes, literally. Um, but like once that last little bit of money was spent, that was it until I needed money again. And 2 or 3 months could go by between these opportunities where I actually needed money. Um, and so that led into a much more flowing life. And because I had developed that trust there of just trusting life, um, I didn't hesitate when all the signs pointed going to Kauai instead of Big Island. I was in San Diego visiting my little brother at the time, and was convinced I was going back home, back to the Big Island. But I had to wait on money to get my plane ticket. I didn't have enough money to actually buy my plane ticket from San Diego to um, Hawaii until my last paycheck from this contract I've been working in Nashville came in. And when that paycheck finally came in, I started looking at plane tickets, and all the tickets to Big Island from LA, from San Diego, from wherever are $650. Tickets to Kauai, 210. So I ended up on Kauai, and you know, I had a lot of amazing experiences there, and I can go into more of those in another video. But again, it came back to this concept of trust, of just rolling with what life gave me there. And somehow magically they started calling me Mr. Synchronicity, because I always was in the right place at the right time. Like I never planned to be there. I just, something would happen. I would get picked up by someone hitchhiking. I would just be wandering along and walking to this place, whatever. But like I always ended up in these really amazing places. And I always ended up meeting these really amazing people. And it was just, it came back to that trust, just trust my intuition, trust life, trust everything. And the more I trusted, the less fear dictated my choices. And so, it's that background where I'm back in the States. I'm in Tennessee. I'm living with, not living with, but living next door to my parents in a condo that I'm helping my dad renovate. And I don't remember exactly how this came out. Like, I was like how that realization came about. But like, all of a sudden, like I was just feeling into this anger and frustration that I was feeling trapped and feeling um, frustrated and depressed again, and miserable. And I just kind of let those feelings be there and just let them percolate without trying to figure them out, without trying to um, understand them or change them in any way. And this question just came up, and it was like, why do I not have a choice about what country I live in? Why has this never been offered? Um, and over the past month or so, since I've been playing with that question, I've remembered different things. Like I've remembered, looking into this before, and like, trying to get permanent residency in Canada, and what it would take to give up my citizenship here in the U.S. and move somewhere else. And uh, so far, everything I found about that has been incredibly expensive. Like I don't have the resources the way I'm living now to do something like that. Um, and so like this just feeling of being trapped in this country, and especially with everything that's going on in the U.S. government right now, and how angry I got at how um, irrelevant my voice felt. Like, it didn't feel like it mattered if I voted. It didn't feel like it mattered if I actually spoke up, because no one listened anyways. Everyone just wants to spout their own opinions, and there's no real dialogue. Like it's just everyone's monologuing out into the world, and no one is really listening, or so it felt like. Obviously there's people listening, but um, that's what it felt like to me at the time. And I was just so angry. Like, I was just so angry and so hateful and frustrated, and fuck this world and fuck this system, and um, you know how stupid are these people to continue perpetuating the system that clearly to me isn't working. Like it may be working for them, but for me it's not. And as I'm, working on like all the things that I'm really angry about, and like letting those come to the surface, and letting the anger be there, um, I remembered something that I have talked about for years. Like I first brought this up when I was like 16 or 17. Um, that there, like, I had this understanding even then that anger comes from fear. That it's the fear that comes first, and the anger is a defense against the fear, or the anger is a way not to feel the fear and to be able to fuel um, doing whatever it is that needs to be done anyways, despite the fear. Like it's anger is not a good or a bad thing to me. It is simply a response and a coping mechanism for fear. Um, and so I remembered that, and I started looking. Okay, well, what am I scared of? Like, what is this? What is this anger in really in response to? Like, what am I trying to avoid by feeling anger? And this is where I still get a little bit stuck. Like, I recognize part of the fear, and that's the fear of being controlled, the fear of not having a choice, um, the fear of being forced to do something that doesn't feel appropriate or good to me, the fear of being hurt, um, the fear of not being able to realize my fullest potential, the fear of being trapped. And so these are all things that are coming up. And these are all the fears that had turned into the anger at the system, and particularly at Donald Trump and my parents for voting for Donald Trump. Um, and for all the people throughout history who, and this seems to be the majority of people, I don't know how true this actually is, but like the majority of people throughout history who would rather live in misery than change the system because they're scared of the unknown and they're scared of the alternatives. Um, and the realization that I was doing the same thing, that I was actually scared of what my life would look like if I actually faced these fears, and worked through them and put these videos out here, and lived my life instead of the life that society puts in front of me or puts in front of us. Um, like, I'm scared of being branded a crazy person. I'm scared of being ostracized. I'm scared of being alone, being lonely. Um, and these fears are, in some ways, they seem to be capitalized on by so many people today, um, and they're reinforced in very subtle ways, and um, there's this, what feels to be this immense amount of pressure to conform, to keep the system the same. And that's fine. Like if so many people are so scared that they need this system for their own comfort, they can have it. That's totally cool. But I don't, it's not for me. It's not for me. And I am done conforming just to keep everyone else happy. And that's been coming out more and more in the conversations with my parents, with a few friends. Like, I have become much more challenging of their belief systems. Not all the time. And I like, it's not about trying to make them wrong and me right. It's about challenging their assumptions and pushing them into this place of, well, do you really know? Like, is what you're saying actually true? Because I don't know if what I'm saying is actually true. And you're spouting all these belief systems as if they're actual fact, and you're living your life as if they're actually fact. But you don't actually know. And not only do you not know, you don't question them. And that's the big thing. So it's like, it's been coming out as anger. And I've had to apologize quite a bit to my mom and my dad, because I have been so angry and so challenging and so confrontational. Um, but this is it. Like this is what I really feel drawn to put out there, is to challenge these deeply rooted assumptions in our society. And actually, at one point, I got so angry at Trump that I started a Twitter account, and I'm not proud of my first couple of tweets. I'm going to leave them out there because they're just they're how I was feeling at the time, and that's okay. But I've used that as this kind of platform to practice. Ah, there's the edit. I just ran out of time, so I'm going to have to edit this now. And sometimes it cuts off a word here or there when it switches videos, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So I've been using Twitter as a platform to practice planting seeds. And what I mean by that is just asking questions, inviting dialogue, inviting introspection, inviting questioning in general of the status quo. And it's been a challenge. It's been kind of a fun one, because it is still very easy for me to get wrapped up in wanting to be right and wanting to prove a point. But it's like, that's been really good practice for me as well, to be able to let all of these ideas wash over me, and to drop back to that intuitive place and only respond to what really feels appropriate in the moment, instead of responding to make an argument, or responding to make a point, or responding to prove somebody wrong. um, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on there. It's at Matt's New World, and I'll post that either in the video, like right there somewhere there, or in the description below if I can't figure out how to do that on YouTube, or if YouTube won't let me. And yeah, that's really about it. Like, that feels like the totality of my journey from anger, or actually from fear into anger, back to fear, back to trust. Because that's really what it all comes back to, is trust. And the more I trust, the way that I did when I was living on Kauai and when I was living on Big Island, the less fear there is, and the less anger there is, and the more peaceful I feel and the more content, and the more this amazing life unfolds around me and miracles start to happen again. And that's pretty cool. So, yeah, if you're still with me, thank you for listening. Thank you for everything that you are in this world. And I really appreciate all of you. Love you so much. Aloha.